When dumb criminals try to steal hollow catalytic converters in Los Angeles and I play the long game. Alright, buckle up because this story has more twists than Mulholland Drive and more drama than a telenovela. It all started one quiet Los Angeles night, the kind of night when the city finally catches its breath and the hum of traffic fades into the background. At exactly 2:45 a.m., that rare serenity was shattered by the deafening roar of my truck. It wasn't a gentle startup, it was the kind of noise that could wake the dead. Groggy and confused, I stumbled outside in my pajamas, flashlight in hand, only to find that my truck had been violated. You see, two local masterminds had decided to steal my catalytic converters. Now, if you're not familiar with catalytic converters, they're a hot target for thieves because of the precious metals inside. The problem? My catalytic converters had been hollowed out years ago. Yep, these two rocket scientists had risked arrest, public humiliation, and the wrath of a sleep-deprived truck owner for what was essentially scrap metal. Standing there, staring at the damage, I couldn't decide whether to be furious or impressed by their sheer incompetence. After taking a moment to process the absurdity of the situation, I decided to investigate. Thankfully, my neighbors have a top-notch security camera setup, and within minutes, I had crystal-clear footage of the entire heist. The culprits? Two local idiots rolling up in a beat-up ex-police Crown Victoria, a car so sketchy it could have been the poster child for bad decisions. The footage showed them sneaking up to my truck with tools in hand, working with all the finesse of toddlers playing with scissors. The Crown Vic itself was a rolling disaster. It had no plates, no taillights, and rattled like a tin can full of rocks. These guys were clearly not criminal masterminds, they were just desperate, stupid, or both. What really got me was how these two were infamous in the neighborhood. They were always hanging out at the local fried chicken shack, chain-smoking, and blasting music that sounded like a dying robot. Nobody could figure out how they made money, but after this stunt, it was clear, stealing catalytic converters was their side hustle. They probably thought they'd hit the jackpot with my truck. Little did they know, they just stepped into a trap of their own making. A master plan is born. Calling the cops was the obvious choice, but honestly, that felt too easy. I wanted to teach these idiots a lesson they'd never forget. So, I called up my buddy who works in code enforcement. This guy has seen everything from illegal dumping to full-blown hoarder houses, and he was more than happy to help me deal with the situation. Together, we came up with a plan that was equal parts legal and satisfying. Their Crown Vic wasn't just an eyesore, it was a rolling violation of every traffic law imaginable. The car hadn't been registered since 2011. It didn't have plates, insurance, or working taillights, and the sound system rattled so badly that you could hear it before you saw it. My buddy laughed when I described the car and said, "If it's parked anywhere public, you've got every right to tow it." That was all the encouragement I needed. Sure enough, the very next day, I found the Crown Vic parked on a quiet residential street. The thing looked even worse up close. The tires were bald, the windows were cracked, and the whole car reeked of cigarette smoke. It was practically begging to be towed. I hooked it up to my tow truck, made sure everything was secure, and hauled it straight to the LAPD impound lot. When I got there, the officers ran the VIN and found out the car wasn't even legally theirs. Apparently, they'd bought it off someone who couldn't afford the mountain of back registration fees and never bothered to transfer the title. The cops couldn't stop laughing. "Take it to the junkyard," one of them said. "That thing's more trouble than it's worth." Chaos. At the junkyard, meanwhile, our two criminal masterminds were panicking. From what I heard later, they thought one of their friends had stolen the car as a prank. They spent hours driving around LA, looking for it, asking everyone they knew if they'd seen their beloved Crown Vic. Eventually, they tracked it down to the junkyard. Now, here's where it gets hilarious. These two idiots decided they were going to steal the car back. I don't know what they were thinking, but their plan was as bad as you'd expect. One of them distracted the junkyard owner by pretending to ask about scrap prices, while the other sneaked over to the Crown Vic and tried to start it. What they didn't realize was that the junkyard crew had already disabled the car by cutting the drive shaft. When the guy turned the key, nothing happened. He was just sitting there, looking like the world's dumbest criminal. Right on cue, the cops showed up. The junkyard owner had called them earlier, suspecting these two were up to no good. The officers caught them red-handed, one still sitting in the car, the other standing awkwardly by the office. It was like watching a bad sitcom unfold in real life. They arrested both of them for trespassing and attempted theft, but the best part was yet to come. Sweet, sweet justice. While the two morons were being hauled away in handcuffs, the junkyard crew decided to finish the job. They brought out a massive crane, hooked it to the Crown Vic, and lifted it high into the air. Then, with a deafening crunch, they began shredding the car into pieces. The sound was music to my ears. By the time they were done, the Crown Vic was unrecognizable, a pile of twisted metal and shattered dreams. When I swung by later to check out the aftermath, I couldn't help but smile. The car was stripped down to its bare frame, like a skeleton left out in the sun. It was poetic justice, plain and simple. The aftermath. You'd think that would be the end of the story, but no. These guys don't know when to quit. A few days later, I noticed something new in their driveway, a beat-up Jeep Liberty. It had no plates, of course, and it looked just as bad as the Crown Vic had. I couldn't believe they were dumb enough to pull the same stunt twice, but hey, some people never learn. This time, I'm ready. I've already talked to my buddy in code enforcement, and we've got a plan in place. The moment that Jeep hits the streets, I'm towing it straight to the junkyard. And this time, I'm bringing snacks, because I'm not missing the show when it gets crushed. Round 2, Jeep Liberty, same idiots, same fate incoming. So, let's fast forward a couple of days after the Crown Vic met its well-deserved end. Life was finally peaceful again, or so I thought. One evening, while I was taking a walk around the neighborhood, I spotted a new addition to their driveway, a beat-up Jeep Liberty. It was the same level of trash as their old Crown Vic, maybe worse. No plates, cracked windshield, and a suspiciously sagging suspension that screamed, "I'm hiding something." I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. These guys had learned absolutely nothing. After the whole Crown Vic fiasco, you'd think they'd go low profile for a while, maybe even consider not driving around in illegal vehicles. But no, they were back to their old tricks. I couldn't decide if they were stubborn, stupid, or both. Either way, I knew one thing: this Jeep wasn't going to last long. Gathering intel. Unlike the Crown Vic, which they mostly used for joyriding and petty theft, the Jeep Liberty seemed to have a slightly more active role. Over the next few days, I noticed them driving it around at odd hours, usually early in the morning or late at night. One time, I saw them loading something suspiciously heavy into the back. My guess? They were back to stealing catalytic converters. To confirm my suspicions, I decided to do a little reconnaissance. I parked my car a few blocks away and waited until they left in the Jeep. I followed them at a safe distance, of course, and watched as they made multiple stops in random neighborhoods. Each time, they'd park, jump out with tools, and disappear for a few minutes before coming back with suspicious bags. Classic catalytic converter theft. By the end of the night, I had all the evidence I needed. It was time for round 2. Setting the trap. This time, I wanted to go bigger and make sure these guys felt the full weight of their stupidity. I called my buddy in code enforcement again and filled him in on the new situation. He was already laughing before I finished explaining. "You really have it out for these guys, huh?" he said. "You bet I do," I replied. "They're not just annoying, they're a menace to the whole neighborhood." We hatched a plan to catch them in the act and get their new junker off the streets for good. My buddy tipped off the police about their suspected activities, and they were more than happy to assist. The plan was simple: wait for the Jeep to be parked somewhere public, tow it, and let the cops deal with the fallout. The bust. A few nights later, the perfect opportunity presented itself. The Jeep was parked on a side street, loaded with tools and who knows what else. I wasted no time calling in the tow. Within minutes, the truck arrived, and the Jeep was on its way to the impound lot. But the fun didn't stop there. Unbeknownst to the two idiots, the police had been watching them for weeks, gathering evidence of their thefts. When they finally showed up at the impound lot to claim the Jeep, they walked right into a trap. The cops arrested them on the spot, charging them with multiple counts of theft and possession of stolen property. The grand finale, the icing on the cake? Just like with the Crown Vic, the Jeep was deemed unfit for the road and sent straight to the junkyard. This time, I made sure to be there in person to watch. The junkyard crew didn't disappoint. They brought out their biggest crane, hooked it to the Jeep, and lifted it high into the air. The two idiots, now handcuffed in the back of a police car, could only watch as their precious vehicle was ripped apart piece by piece. The sound of metal crunching was even more satisfying the second time around. By the time the crane was done, the Jeep was nothing more than a pile of twisted scrap. I stood there, sipping my coffee, savoring the sweet taste of victory. Aftermath. As of now, the two criminals are facing serious charges, and the neighborhood has been much quieter. It feels good knowing they're off the streets, at least for a while. But I'll admit, a part of me almost misses the drama. Almost. If they ever try something like this again, I'll be ready. Until then, I'm just enjoying the peace and quiet. And hey, maybe I'll get a new hobby, like installing more security cameras or becoming a full-time tow truck vigilante. TLDR, the idiots who stole my hollow catalytic converters got a new junker, a Jeep Liberty, and went back to stealing. I tracked them, had it towed, and watched as they got arrested and the Jeep was shredded. At the junkyard. Justice served twice, and I'm here for it.